postpartum dairy cows. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson, and sorry for the long title. As you know, the dairy cows, most of the dairy cows experience negative energy balance during the early postpartum period. And it is well known that there is a close relationship between the negative energy balance and lower albumin, lower blood nitrogen or BUN, non-esterified fatty acid or NIFA, beta-hydroxybutyric acid BHBA were increased. And also, it's closely related to uterine diseases. So now we focus on a couple of enzymes secreted from neutrophils. I knew that Osvaldo mentioned leukocyte esterase, LE, has been known to be related or reflect the uterine inflammation or endometrial inflammation. So it can be very quick and cow-side test and useful. But another enzyme we looked for was myeloperoxidase. This is also is a family of mammalian peroxidase enzymes, and it's known to help the neutrophils kill bacteria. So it may help us know not only the PM%, but also the function of neutrophils. And this is a well-known figure reported by Williams in more than 10 years ago. And so some of the bacteria shown here are recognized as pathogenic to the endometrium. Trupelella pyogenes, Brevotera, and E. coli, and Fusobacterium. And the other, as shown here, may pathogenic or just opportunistic contaminant. So our objective this time is to determine relationship between periparturient plasma levels of biochemical parameters, LE and MPO activities, as well as bacterial species in cows with clinical and subclinical endometritis. And also was to determine the optimal postpartum time for detecting the occurrence of clinical and subclinical endometritis to predict the subsequent fertility status in dairy cows, because most of the research papers have shown that the week 5 may be the best time to predict the future fertility and diagnose the endometritis. To predict the reproductive performance. But we wanted to know if the earlier stage of postpartum may be useful for detecting the cows at high risk for the future fertility. So this is just a preliminary study, and we used only 43 animals, excluding some diseases, mastitis or die. So we used only 43 animals. And as we took vaginal mucus samples, also Osvaldo mentioned, and endometrial samples, bacteriology, and for blood samples, albumin, BUN, NIFA, BHBA, and total cholesterol from week 3, 5, and 7, 3 times every 2 weeks. So this is cytobacter, and also the previous presenters talked about this, and I skipped this slides, and this is also the same. So we used counting a minimum of 200 cells, more or less much the same as used, I think, the previous presenters, speakers. But so this study, we defined healthy cows, subclinical, and clinical endometritis, depending on which stage of postpartum. So it has been reported week 3, of course, naturally the PM% the cutoff point was higher. So according to the previous report by Kasimanikam, we classified healthy cows according to the PM% less than 18 or equal to or more than 18 for endometritis. And to divide it into two groups here is for subclinical or clinical, depending on the score of Metrocheck. So this is week 5. The cutoff point was 6%, and the cutoff point for vaginal mucus was 0 to 1 for subclinical, and 2 to 4 was subclinical. And week 7 is 4%, and the cutoff point for vaginal mucus was the same. So this is a strip method is the same. So this is a bit of mechanism how to produce azo dye, by coupling reaction. So also this is the same scoring as Osvaldo mentioned. And we analyzed myeloperoxidase by ELISA kit. And for bacterial isolation, we used media blood agar and aerobically and anaerobically and incubation identification was done as shown here. And we classified pathogenic or non-pathogenic bacteria, as I showed you in the previous slide. So the result. So correlation coefficient of relationship between PM% and biochemical parameters show only there were tendency between albumin and BUN with week 3 in week 3 and between BUN and PM% at week 7. So, but there was not so strong relationship, but weak relationship. And this is associations of LE and MPO with PM% in endometrial samples. So this is the blue color here is week 3. So between PM% and LE had a positive correlation. Also, week 5 and week 7 had a significant positive correlation. On the other, also the Pearson correlation was strongest among the 3 sampling time. The week 3 was the strongest. On the other hand, PM%, the relationship was weak, was not significant relationship between MPO and PM% in neither of the weeks, 3, 5, nor 7, postpartum. And this is a comparison of bacterial detection rates between healthy and subclinical and clinical endometritis. And so this red bar shows the detection rate of pathologic bacteria, and the orange bar shows non-pathogenic bacteria. As you can see, there was a significant difference between the healthy cows and clinical endometritis at week 3. And so at week 5 also there was a difference between healthy cows and subclinical at week 5 between the pathogenic bacterial isolation rate and also non-pathogenic isolation or detection rate. So this is a comparison of subsequent reproductive performance between cows with subclinical and cows with clinical endometritis. Although this is the sample size was very small, there was a significant difference in conception rate at first service at week 3 between healthy cows and subclinical endometritis. So association between LE and PM% was stronger at week 3 than that week 5 and week 7 postpartum. So this preliminary study suggests that taking samples at week 3 for determination of LE is useful for the diagnosis of subclinical endometritis and also may predict for future fertility. So as to the PM level, unfortunately, we had no positive result. But previously, high level of PMN in milk was related to high number of somatic cells and neutrophils in daily cows. Also, in males that had endometritis diagnosed by positive cytology had high level of MPO during estrus. So in our case, this is at least this is the first report of myeloperoxidase concentration in the uterine lumen of cows. And this finding is contradicted with the previous report. But one of the reasons why our result was contradicted with the previous report was this is taken during early postpartum period, regardless of estrus cycle in present study. So maybe the difference in animal species. So in conclusion, there was association observed between leukocyte esterase activity and endometrial inflammation. This already well known, but diagnosis of endometritis as early as week 3 may be able to predict subsequent fertility as long as LE concerned. As Osvaldo showed us that specificity rather than sensitivity was higher, if I'm correct. So in our case also, as long as specificity is very high, so diagnosing by using test strip to determine the level of leukocyte esterase may be useful as early as week 3 postpartum. Thank you.